The aim and ambition that we have is to beat the electoral cycle. Next year in May, there will be the European Parliament election and then there will be a new European Commission nominated in the summer and appointed in the autumn, presumably, and to have an adoption in the spring of next year. The order of the day is a quick, because we live in interesting times that require agile policy responses, but at the same time, a robust policy response on a European level. So why do we need to act? Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, first of all, we need to act to overcome our policy dependencies. For years, Europe has been dependent on Russian gas for its energy needs. There has been a quite sudden and abrupt realization of this when Mr. Putin decided to brutally aggress Ukraine last winter, in the winter of 2022. This dependency made our economies, and in particular those of some member states, including that of our country of origin, and their citizens, vulnerable to price fluctuations, and gave an autocratic regime a lever to exert pressure on us. Pushing forward the green transition also means reducing our dependency from fossil fuels and from fossil energy imports. However, Europe is currently also a net importer of net zero energy technologies. So the question that we ask ourselves here is, what are we going to replace our dependency on Russian gas with? When the whole reflection on the green transition, on the net zero future of Europe started quite a few years ago now, the main driver of it was sustainability, intended and understood as a climate and environmental sustainability. Then the reflection evolved, adding a multidimensional identity to the word sustainability. First of all, most recently, when the COVID-19 pandemic started receding, we saw the price of material inputs of our economy, energy, but also raw materials like lithium, for instance, that are paramount for our green transition, hit the roof. And we started not only thinking about climate and environmental sustainability, but also of the economic and financial sustainability of our economic, industrial, and energy system. With the invasion of Ukraine and the abrupt exit from the dependency on Russian gas, which was extremely effective because we got out, we were importing 150 billion tons per year of Russian gas. Now we're importing almost nothing. It was very effective, but very expensive. We also started questioning and asking ourselves questions, perhaps a bit too late, I admit, personally, the political and geopolitical sustainability of our model. And at the same time, there's a fourth dimension of sustainability that is very important in the discourse, and we'll see this later, which is social sustainability. We have a European social model, we have a welfare in our society, and we want to preserve it, we want to improve it. And if we regulate and legislate and do policies that are draconian and only apply to ourselves, the European Union accounts for about 8% of greenhouse gas emissions, or global greenhouse gas emissions. We ended up doing two things. We destroy our social model, hitting in particular our most vulnerable layers of society and our most vulnerable regions, but we end up exporting emissions and exporting and delocalizing polluting productions, and so doing zero favors to the planet. So now the reflection is multidimensional, and this is our starting point. So coming back to the Net Zero Industry Act, we drastically reduced our dependency on Russian gas. What do we want to replace it with? Obviously, we want to replace, we have the climate law, we have Fit for 55, which is a set of measures designed to lead Europe to its climate objectives, which, again, for those who are outside the Brussels bubble, is a reduction of net GHG emissions of 55% by 2030 compared to 1990, and net neutrality, net carbon neutrality in 2050. We need decarbonized energy, we need renewable energy, we need the equipment to do it. We are importers. So what we want to do now, we certainly don't want to end up replacing our dependency from fossil fuels with industrial and technological dependencies on partners that are not always like-minded or stable in the field of clean technologies. On solar cells and modules, we strongly depend on China, and on other key net zero technologies, we rely on concentrated sources on supply. If you look on the slide, at the chart on the top left, on the left part of the slide, you see a number of colors. I don't see if it's readable on screens, but in a nutshell, red is China. Dark blue is Europe, light blue is other Asia Pacific, and green is dark green is North America. As you can see, in different net zero technologies, the first section is solar photovoltaic, wafer cells and modules. The second is wind onshore. The third is wind offshore. Then you have batteries for electrical vehicles, fuel cells for trucks, heat pumps and electrolyzers. But you see the picture. And the overall picture is that a lot of production of equipment for net zero technologies is clustered in a single region, which, by the way, in 2022 accounted for about 90% of overall investments in manufacturing. So, need to act quickly at European level. An important point of clarification that I should have made possibly earlier is that the Net Zero Industry Act is not about the deployment of energy, is not about the production of solar energy, wind energy, etc., etc. It's about the industrial capacity for the manufacturing of equipment, which is then necessary, is deployed and is necessary to produce decarbonized energy. Concretely, we're talking about factories for the production of batteries, gigafactories for the production of solar PV panels and modules, factories for the production of wind turbines, tower, nacelle and blade, etc., etc. It's an important point, and it's the most frequent misconception that we are encountering. There's a second one, which I'll clarify later. But anyway, the second driver for action is the absolute necessity to overcome the barriers to the manufacturing scale-up. These barriers are threefold, the main ones. The first one is global supply chain and price constraint. I've already mentioned what led us to the realization about the sustainability from an economic and financial point of view of our system. Basically, in particular, in the last few years, investments into our European net zero industries have been made unstable by the volatility in international material prices, more extensive transportation and financing, and continued supply chain bottlenecks. To just give you an example speaks more than 1,000 words, they say. For instance, stakeholders have reported that around a quarter of all planned EU solar projects were either postponed or cancelled overall entirely in 2021. Because of the global energy and raw material price hikes. The second main barrier, and this is a very significant one, is long permitting timelines for new manufacturing facilities. Now, permitting has been a much debated issue as regards the deployment of renewable energies, in particular solar and wind. It's one of the reasons why, for instance, our solar industry all but vanished, almost vanished, or shrank significantly in the last 30 years or so. It's the lengthiness and uncertainty of the permitting projects that has caused the situation largely. If you are an off-taker, would you invest in the financing of products that you might or might not be able to deploy at a very uncertain and undefined point in time? And when we speak about time, we talk about years. No. This is also the case for manufacturing of this equipment. And in general, in particular for the wind and solar industry, but not only, in general for clean tech, if you go and talk as a policymaker to industry players, significant industry players, European players, and you tell them, you know, I'm your Aladdin's lamp genius and I grant you one wish, what would you like? And that's something we did without the Aladdin bit. The almost invariable answer is deal with the uncertainty of permitting. Deal with it because it's killing us, it's killing the transition, it's making the attainment of Europe's own mandatory decarbonization objectives impossible. So the same applies. This has been dealt with the for the deployment with the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, with a specific council regulation which was adopted a few months ago. Now the implementation is key. And here, as for deployment, as for manufacturing, sorry, the key is obviously having authorities in the member states and in their regions, Bundesländer, autonomous communities, municipalities, departments, etc. Authorities, I was saying, which are properly staffed to deal with the growing number of applications, and this staff is properly skilled. And we come back to skill in a second. But anyway, net zero technology manufacturing projects undergo lengthy and complex permitting procedures between 2 and 7 years, depending on the member states, and uncertain because at the end of a 5, 6, 7 year period, the answer might well be no. So you're left with a fistful of flies, as we say in Italian, after a long time. If if the project is not good, an applicant should be able to receive a clear answer in a much shorter time frame. And then the variation between 2 and 7, it depends on the member state technology and value chain segment. It takes 2 years for project promoters from their final investment decision to the beginning of commercial operations. It can take up to 5 years for opening new manufacturing facilities for electric vehicle batteries production. And on top of the permitting procedures and construction work, additional time is needed to launch the manufacturing process, which can take up to 1 year. The third big barrier is the lack of skilled workforce. I'm talking presumably to a number of Nordics. There was a few weeks ago on the financial. Also. Okay. Well, the Financial Times is the global Paris newsletter here. So I can quote the Financial Times. Okay. There was a long read on the Northvolt and its gigafactory in the north of Sweden, in a town which whose pronunciation I've been told about 6 times by a very nice Swedish colleague, but I cannot myself make myself pronounce. So it's Skellefteå or something. It's a great project. It's exceptional in Europe in the sense that in the north of Sweden, at least in the European Union, they have a regular, abundant, available, and relatively affordable supply of renewable energy. And the management of Northvolt was quoting the lack of skilled workforce as one of the main bottlenecks to further expansion of their operation there. Strengthening the manufacturing capacity of net zero technologies will not be possible without a sizable skilled workforce. The skill gap is acute. Skills needs are expected to increase rapidly. I think you have a couple of figures on the slide, and yes, the estimates are that there will be the need for an extra 180,000 skilled workers in the hydrogen sector and about 70,000 for solar PV by 2030, which in light of the time it takes to invest in building profiles, setting up institutions, curricula, etc., is not so far away. So a significant investment in training and education will be needed to ensure that the workforce is equipped with the skills and knowledge necessary to meet the challenges of the transition to a low carbon economy. And then finally, it's about seizing opportunity. I was mentioning before, this is a booming, growing market. It's expected to triple by 2030. And for our companies and citizens, this opportunity would mean turning skills into quality, high value added jobs and innovation into mass production. For our societies, this would mean fostering green growth and green prosperity and a lot of social sustainability as well. The resilience of our future energy systems will be measured notably by secure access to the technologies that will power our decarbonized energy systems, wind turbines, electrolyzers, batteries, solar PV, heat pumps, and other. It's probably worth reminding that to achieve our net zero ambition by 2050, we have to massively electrify our economies, our industry, and our energy systems. This electricity should be available, affordable, accessible, and decarbonized, renewable as much as possible. And the production is expected to double from about 1,000 to 2,000 terawatt hours by 2050. So a secure supply of energy will be essential for ensuring economic growth and ultimately public order and security. In line with that, we put forward the Net Zero Industry Act. The primary aim of the NZI, as we call it within the bubble, is to overcome these barriers that I mentioned, to allow Europe to have a solid and secure manufacturing base in this technology and provide the predictability, certainly long-term signals to incentivize demand and facilitate investments. Finally, we usually tend to overlook it's the original driver. This is also obviously about reaching our climate goals. I don't need to underline or to give a sermon to you this morning because I'm preaching long enough already, and I'm very aware of the fact that time is the clock is ticking. What's in the act? Okay, first of all, objectives. I spoke. The scope is twofold, and we tend to get a lot of questions about this. It includes net zero technologies, and strategic net zero technologies. Sorry. Strategic net zero technologies that make a significant contribution to decarbonization by 2030 and that are commercially available or soon to enter the market. That obscure TRL 8 is the technology readiness level defined on a scale which is established by the International Energy Agency, which is close to market readiness. All net zero technologies benefit from the provisions in the regulation, while strategic net zero technologies enjoy extra benefits, that is benefiting from strategic net zero projects and the resilience criterion in auctions. We'll come to this later. We set a clear policy direction and trying to increase market certainty through setting in the regulation a manufacturing capacity benchmark. It's a benchmark, it's not a target, it's not a mandatory target, of 40% for strategic net zero technologies of the EU's annual deployment needs by 2030. It's a mixed bag. Yes, we put in the same bag apples and oranges. There is in the preamble, in the recitals, the preliminary part of the regulation, a bit of a breakdown, but basically the objective of this is like to act as an alarm bell for policymakers. If we see a significant negative deviation from our objectives, this will trigger policy action. Will serve as an alarm bell for policy action. What's in the Act? There are a number of drivers in the Act that are reflected in the different chapters. The Commission proposals aim at harmonizing and streamline permitting procedures across the EU, permitting being the first of these drivers. First of all, setting up clear time limits for the entire permit granting process, covering all relevant administrative permits and environmental assessments from the acknowledgement of the project application until its final approval. Second, very important and a sort of big ask from industry and usually also from citizens in their dealings with public administrations. We require, the Commission proposal requires member states to set up one-stop shops, allowing project promoters to interact with a single national authority responsible for coordinating the entire permit granting process, regardless of which and how many authorities are involved in the process, which is not the Commission's or Europe's business. And then we also have provisions that simplify planning and carrying out environmental impact assessment more effectively, and also information sharing. The second pillar is investment, and this is the second disclaimer I mentioned before. I don't know if it prevents a number of questions, but no, there is no money, no fresh money, no money attached to the Net Zero Industry Act. The Net Zero Industry Act is about creating the conditions for Europe to have a manufacturing base in the sectors I mentioned, addressing the challenges I mentioned, and with the drivers that you see on the screen. This said, it's obvious that member states and the Commission are encouraged to accelerate and undertake activities to crowd in private investments in net zero strategic projects, to accelerate their implementation without prejudice to state aid rules. By the way, the Commission a few weeks ago adopted an extension of the TCTF, the temporary framework for state aid, targeting in particular cleantech sector. So facilitating and easing the conditions for the provision of state aid to the cleantech sectors. The Net Zero Industry Act supports the raising of private investment by foreseeing the provision of support by the Commission and Member States. It establishes, and that's the last pillar in the slide, a net zero platform to advise on the completion of financings for net zero strategic products, and also brings together manufacturers and off-takers of net zero technologies, cooperating with industrial alliances. The third core driver is an extremely important one, is access to markets. The idea here is that we want to ensure a stable public demand for net zero technologies. Public buyers are an extremely important player in these markets. And if we nudge them towards becoming sort of virtuous buyers of best-in-class, most sustainable equipment for the deployment of renewable energy, this will not only have an intrinsic benefit, but also will probably nudge and shift the market globally, including private buyers, including industry buyers, including consumer buyers, towards the purchase of these products, by improving the scaling up, the industrial scale up, and the availability, of these products, and thus making them more affordable. In this regard, the Net Zero Industry Act proposal requires the taking into account of non-price award criteria for the sustainability and resilience contribution of tenders in auctions and public procurement procedures. We want to get out of the logic of the race to the bottom, only in price terms, in procurement and public auctions of this equipment. Public procurement and auctions will have to rely on award criteria linked to the quality of the tender. First, in terms of environmental sustainability, innovation, energy system integration, and resilience, to ensure that investment support by EU taxpayers contribute to reduce the Union's dependency risk in the long run. And secondly, also through taking into account sustainability and resilience criteria in designing public support schemes, as I was mentioning, the purchase of these products will be made more accessible and easier for other buyers. The fourth core driver, and it's extremely significant, you've seen the figures before. I'm sure that in the audience there will be someone interested or working on skills in this area. The measures on skills for net zero technology are designed to allow the European Union to secure a labor force that is skilled and ready to contribute to the clean energy transitions. In detail, the Net Zero Industry Act provides for net zero industry academies to roll out upskilling and reskilling programs in net zero technologies, on raw materials, and to support capacities of public authorities in charge of permitting and public procurement procedures for net zero industry. And in this, we already have good blueprints. We started a few years ago with batteries academies. Now with the European Solar Industry Alliance, we'll have solar academies, which are in the pipeline as well. So we are following in a trail that is being blazed already for the last few years. The Commission is provided in this respect to provide, is committed, to provide seed funding Academies will develop learning programs that will be delivered by education and training providers across member states. And another important aspect is that where resulting training credentials match qualifications needed for the access to exercise in a regulated profession, the Act provides for measures to fast-track their recognition. So basically, this does not happen to avoid, it complements other measures as the already existing or planned academies, the EU Pact for Skills, the EU Skills Agenda, the industrial transition pathways, and of course, 2023 is the European Year of Skills. Innovation, fifth pillar. The proposal introduces regulatory sandboxes to test innovative net zero technologies in a controlled environment. Basically, these are, I'm not a lawyer. A lawyer would be able, much better than I am, to explain to the non-initiated what the regulatory sandbox is. It's basically a lab to test in a real-life condition, but in a controlled environment, a regulatory lab. Innovative technologies that are scaling up their technology readiness level, the TRL that we saw in the previous slide, by having controlled and regulated exemptions and carve-outs to regulation in force to allow the testing of and the development, evolution of these technologies. So this happens in a controlled environment for a limited amount of time, with any derogation of exemption granted already framed under relevant union or national law. These sandboxes are the main insurance for the future-proofing of the regulation, because they allow for a pipeline of technologies to get under the full scope of the regulation. And the proposal also introduced targeted support for SMEs in the context of these sandboxes and their potential access to them. Another support measure for SMEs, which obviously are not as equipped as larger players to take advantage and benefit of the most sophisticated and complex provisions of the regulation. Finally, and I close, and I think I've overstayed my welcome for about 5 minutes. Sixth point is more interesting for the initiated, probably the non-initiated. We have a governance system that is called the Net Zero Europe platform, which will be a reference body driving the governance of the provisions of the Net Zero Industry Act for the Commission and the member states to discuss, exchange information, and share best practices on issues, in particular on investment-related issues related to the regulation. Sorry. We also obviously provide for the possibility to gather input from relevant stakeholders with an interest in the net zero industry and clean tech sectors, and to cooperate with industrial alliances to bring together undertakings in the net zero industry, various net zero industry sectors. A final point, which is not on the slide. Yes, it is. We will develop net zero industrial partnerships because one of the pillars of the Green Deal Industrial Act is trade, and we remain, it's in our DNA, we remain an open system. First with our internal market of 27, actually more than 27. I shouldn't say 27 about internal market in a Norwegian house, of many European countries, and then with an outlook of openness to the world. The partnerships are aimed to promote the adoption of net zero technologies globally. As I said, we are a minion in terms of emissions, and if we only clean up our house, we have a very limited impact. We want to promote the adoption, the carbonization, the adoption of net zero technologies globally. and to support the role of EU industrial capabilities in paving the way for the global clean energy transition. And that's it, dear listeners. Kudos to you if you made it alive to the end of the sermon. And I guess it's question time now.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for this comprehensive overview of the Net Zero Industry Act. And thank you also for coming despite your cold and for taking the effort to do your presentation with us. I think our connected guests are appreciating your kindness on this. As the moderator, I would take the privilege to put you the first question, which is a curiosity I have since quite long. And meanwhile, I remind the people that connected maybe later after the start that you can reserve your right to put a question to Stefano by writing your name on the Q&A box. So do not raise hands, so do not write anything elsewhere. Use the Q&A, state your name, and you will be called to open your microphone and camera.
So, can I make a disclaimer? I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions, both in terms of quantity and in terms of knowledge, probably. I make a solemn commitment. Some of those left with an appetite who want to follow in writing, we will endeavor to reply with a follow-up. My colleagues are going to hate me for making this promise. But if there are substantive questions that cannot get an answer this morning, we will endeavor to.
That's totally perfect. Mine is a political question, Stefano. Is linked to the fact that I really liked the first slide, and especially the current dependency on production of net zero technologies in Europe. And of course, I recognize one of the red lines being related to batteries. And we know that in the latest period, Europe is pointing a lot of attention of increasing the production of batteries in Europe. So basically to shorten the red line and to make a blue line a little bit longer. But I see another issue here, because for producing batteries, we need raw materials. And my question, because I participated some time ago in another meeting where I challenged Commissioner Timmermans of the same field. And he told me, no, but we have the resources in Europe. I can guarantee we have the resources in Europe. So my question is it real that we have the resources in Europe to not fall in a dependence from China, not on the production of batteries, but on the materials that we need to produce the batteries?
Look, this is a complex question which does not deserve a simplistic answer. But if you look at what the Commission adopted on the 16th of March in terms of proposals, there was a package of 3 measures. One is the reform of the energy markets. The other one was the Net Zero Industry Act. And the third one was the Critical Raw Materials Act, which is designed to address exactly this sort of gap that we might have. In terms of lithium, I can say that the figures I've seen point to the fact that by 2050, we're going to need 35 times, so plus 3,500% the lithium that we need today. I don't have any lithium in my pockets here now, but and you've seen the price. So there is, I'm not going to dwell into the Net Zero Industry Act because I did not work directly on it. But you might want to pursue and continue the discussion with the colleagues that worked on it. It's a very important, complement. The Net Zero Industry Act and the Critical Raw Materials Act are complementary. The scope of the CRMA is where the scope of the NZIA starts. So there is policy action on that. Also, we have in the final stages of adoption of the there's battery regulation. The new battery regulation on batteries and batteries waste, on which my team and I worked as well, together with our friends in the Environment Directorate General of the Commission, which addresses a number of issues related to raw materials, including by setting mandatory and growing time stagger recycling rates for these raw materials. So we are, leaving no stone unturned in trying to secure a secure supply of these raw materials for Europe. But I mean, this is not something simple. It's a complex and long-term challenge.
Thank you. So we can start with the questions. I see Alberto Grasso asked to intervene. So Alberto, we are going to allow you to talk. Be ready to accept our invitation and open your camera and microphone. Please also briefly introduce who you are and where you are from.
Hi, good morning. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I think you are muted. We cannot hear you.
I should be unmuted. Can you hear me?
No. There is probably some.
I'm unmuted on my end.
Some issue on your side, I suspect, Alberto.
Oh, the chat.
So it is a problem on our side then.
Yeah.
Then let's us fix here locally the lack of audio. Sorry. Give us a second to understand why it's not working locally. Yeah. Okay, can you try to speak, Alberto?
Can you hear me now?
No. Oh, this is a big issue. Try to use T0 Forte as the first one. This one. Can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, here you are.
No.
Sorry,
Okay, perfect.
it was a local problem. Yeah.
No problem. First of all, good morning. I'm Alberto Grasso. I'm from Brunswick Group. And my question is related to the legislative process concerning the Net Zero Industry Act. And I was wondering if you have already an idea of what the future of the Act will look like, if you already know what the Parliament and the Council might focus on with amendments, or if you expect them to just approve the Act as it is.
Cool.
Look at the crystal ball.
They started already. We have a rapporteur appointed by the Parliament. The main committee is the Industry, Transport and Energy Committee of the Parliament. The rapporteur is Mr. Ehler. He is a German member of the European Parliament from the largest group in the European Parliament, which is the European People's Party. Contacts have started. Yesterday, we had a technical briefing for ITRE, which is the acronym for this committee staff. There was Commissioner Breton went to ITRE a few weeks ago. We followed with another technical briefing with members of the Parliament. There have been contacts with the other associated committees. Work in the Council Working Party, examining the proposal now under Swedish presidency, as of the 1st of July, Spanish presidency, has started already. Questions are broad. They cover all the different pillars of the provisions, all the different chapters. There are a lot of questions, as I expect them to be today, on scope. There is the fact that I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, the fact that we took an exceptional procedure to deliver a proposal for regulation in basically 6 weeks. Usually, this is a process that takes months, if not a year or a year and a half or so. So we skipped the public consultation and especially the impact assessment step. This is a a situation with little precedent. A very prominent recent one was the European Chips Act. So you see the kind of situations in which this is used. It's used where action is robust and quick action is required. So we are producing now a sort of retrofitted impact assessment, sort of mini impact assessment that will be adopted by mid-July. And a lot of questions relate to the potential impacts of this. I don't expect the co-legislators to adopt the Commission proposals as is, because they exert their prerogative and they never do. I hope that the final adoption will happen, as I said, by the spring of 2024. And the proposal, if it can be improved, you know, we're always listening, always prepared for new ideas, especially in a situation like this, where we acted double or triple quick. But to cut a long story short, the look of it is complex but promising. So I want to, my glass is half full, I want to see the glass half full in what is a particularly exceptional situation. But yes, I mean, your question is key. This is what the focus of the process is on now, Parliament and Council.
Okay, thank you. Next one willing to intervene is Tudy Bernier. So Tudy, we are allowing you to intervene, just a few seconds, and please open your camera.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly, Tudy.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I had put the question in the chat, but I can do it orally. So thanks a lot for the presentation. My name is Tudy Bernier. I work for CO2 Value Europe. We're the European association representing carbon capture and utilization. And so my question was about the distinction that you mentioned, Mr. Soro, between net zero technologies and strategic net zero technologies. And so in this specific case, one of my questions would be, can you walk us through the rationale for why CCU, for example, or RFNBOs, so renewable fuels of non-biological origin, are considered as a net zero technology, but they're not in the strategic net zero technology annex? And if you could help us understand what is the reasoning of the Commission for this distinction and putting, for example, CCU in one of the categories, but not in the strategic category. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, first of all, carbon capture and storage is in the annex, is among the strategic net zero technologies, so I'm a bit puzzled by your question, but anyway, there are two things that have to be mentioned here. First of all, we're not talking about carbon capture, storage, and usage. We're not talking about wind energy. We're not talking about solar energy. We're talking about equipment, which is a bit of a different proposition. And as I said, it's one of the aspects that's most difficult to present, because we always come back. So why is this energy not in? Why is that energy in? We're always talking about equipment. Net zero technologies include renewable energy technologies, electricity and heat storage technologies, heat pumps, grid technologies, renewable fuels of non-biological origin technologies, electrolyzers and fuel cells, fusion, small modular reactors and related best-in-class fuels, carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies, as well as energy system-related energy efficiency technologies. They refer to the final products, specific components, and specific machinery primarily used for the production of those products. So we're not talking about CCU, we're not talking about wind energy, etc., etc. The following 8 technologies are strategic net zero technologies: solar photovoltaic and solar thermal technologies, onshore wind and offshore renewable technologies, battery and storage technologies, heat pumps and geothermal energy technologies, electrolyzers and fuel cells, sustainable biogas and biomethane technologies, carbon capture storage technologies, grid technologies. The selected strategic technologies are key to decarbonizing the Union. That's the rationale. The Union's industry and preserving it in Europe. And they draw on the following three main criteria. First of all, technological readiness level. The second one is contribution to decarbonization and competitiveness. And the third one is security of supply risks. So the distinction, by the way, is fairly thin, because even those which are not in the annex benefit from the bulk of the provisions of the Commission proposal. There are some extra benefits that I mentioned before. I won't dwell on them again, regarding strategic net zero technologies benefiting from the resilient criterions in auction in particular. I would like to underline that both strategic and non-strategic technologies can become net zero strategic projects if they fulfill the criteria outlined in the regulation based on the contribution made by the project to the technological and industrial resilience of the Union's energy system, etc., etc. You can see that in the regulation.
Okay, I hope this answered to your question, Tudi.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Happy to share more on CCU if needed, but thanks a lot for the further clarification, Mr. Sol.
Thank you very much. So we have Johan Husted from NTNU this time. So he's a colleague. Johan, we are giving you the possibility to talk. You can open your camera and microphone. Nice to see you again. Are you with us, Johan? Yeah, I see you are appearing. Just open your microphone. There we are.
Okay, thank you. Actually, my first question was the same as you raised, Massimo, about critical materials. Where will the materials come from? So that was that question. But I know that it is possible to extract lithium, for instance, from seawater. That is possible, but if it's economic today, I don't know really. And there are also some new technologies that is available, especially mentioned from MIT. They are actually developing a more low-cost synthesizing method for lithium in cathodes. I was visiting them last month. The other question was also on these different equipment and the difference between net zero and strategic net zero, which was actually raised here also, because I was curious about these modular nuclear reactors, these small ones, which is heavily discussed also now in Norway politically. They are on the net zero technology list, but not on the strategic. I think I understand your answer, right? Is that because of these technologies are more or less developed in Asia and in the US and not in EU, or is there a special reason for why it's like this?
Because they don't fulfill the three criteria that that we meant, that I just mentioned. But I mean, again, it's not, it's not a punishment. And we have, as I tried to explain, maybe I wasn't completely clear, there are avenues for technologies that are not listed at all within the scope of the regulation to enter it via sandboxes or otherwise, and for technologies that are also in the body, only in the body of the regulation, that are net zero technologies, but not strategic net zero technologies. To become strategic net zero technologies, they start fulfilling the three criteria that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
So one thing that we've tried to do imperfectly and under extreme conditions. But I mean, I think that at least you should give us points for the effort, is not for the result, is to try and make this a future-proof piece of legislation that can be adapted to technological and environmental and scientific and geopolitical and economic and financial and sustainability evolutions and developments. So this is what we did. Look, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, who was talking about electric vehicles? And I'm talking about something which is, where was Europe's production of batteries? Who had heard of hydrogen electrolyzers? Yeah, probably you, because you are in NTNU. But we need to avoid regulatory sclerosis, which is a disease that I hope this is not being recorded. Oh, whoops. So it's a disease I've encountered in a distant past as a commission official. I think there's a genuine effort here, and there's a genuine effort in the last few years with the introduction of strict impact assessment requirements in legislation, at least as regards, no disrespect to the co-legislators, but at least as regards Commission proposal to try and future-proof legislation, try and anticipate developments.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for clarification.
For the question.
Yeah,
I would propose to take a final question because we are running out of time, if you don't mind. So Josephine Anderson, we are promoting you, and then I kindly ask the remaining persons that haven't got an answer directly from Stefano to send us the question. We will collect them and we will send to Stefano that kindly propose to answer them in written. So I kindly ask to Robin.
We'll see what we do. Our colleagues are working very long hours.
Yeah, but apparently we have 6 to 7 questions,
okay.
So could be handleable. Josephine, please introduce yourself, of course.
Yes, hello, and thank you for taking my question in the last few minutes. I am Josephine Anderson, representing Statkraft, Norwegian power company and the largest producer of renewable power in Europe, and we have quite a big pipeline of projects both in wind, solar, and batteries across Europe. And my question is about the non-price criteria in the Net Zero Industry Act. And I was wondering, is the Commission planning to issue any form of guidance on how to structure the auction in relation to how to balance between the requirements for, or the criteria for sustainability, innovation, and the resilience criteria? And on the resilience criteria, will there also be any guidance on how this should be countered or measured in relation to the 65% threshold? I guess it's component level, is it project level, and so on, and how should it be documented? I don't know if this is something you could answer, but also happy to connect with any colleagues who could.
Okay, I'm not a public procurement expert, and this part of the regulations being written, the pen has been held by the colleagues in DG GROW, in our Directorate General who work on that. But there are two things here. First of all, we'll have to look at the outcome of the negotiations between the co-legislators to see what this looks like. And one of my favorite sayings is, a good law is like a sausage. It might taste good, but you don't want to see how it's made. The second point is that, yes, I mean, irrespective of the Net Zero Industry Act, we have started informal work together with our colleagues in DG Energy, actually under the leadership of our colleagues in DG Energy's close cooperation with value chain players and also authorities, very informally just started a few months ago on non-price criteria in wind auctions. So this is something that is in the zeitgeist. And the fact that this plays an important role in the Net Zero Industry Act is a reflection of this. We'll have to see how this comes out of the co-decision process. But yes, there will certainly be some form of guidance on this, because there's also a limit to what the legislation, hard law, can do on this.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome, Josephine. Okay, I think we are running late. We are 7 minutes beyond the planned time. We have exploited a lot the courtesy of Stefano to be with us today. As told, we will collect the questions that you would like to send us, the one that asked to be answered, and we will send to Stefano, counting on the possible kindness of the unit to give the answers. A reminder, this recording, yes, is going to be put at disposal on our 1 Hour with Europe section in the Brussels office website. So just go on Google NTNU Brussels office, and you will find even the previous editions of the 1 Hour with Europe webinar. So, Stefano, thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation.
For being with
Thanks
us.
for the questions. Apologies, maybe I should have preached 10 minutes shorter, and
It's totally fine. See you at the next 1 Hour with Europe appointment. Thank you.